Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, November 14th, 2024 GLR REA Renewable Energy Seminar. Tonight we're going to talk about Pope Francis's two landmark encyclicals as a framework for both faith and sustainability in the renewable energy industry. Our presentation tonight is by Reverend Charles M. Morris, hosted by myself, Mark Clevey, lifetime member of GLREA and former board member. Our financial sponsors are Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, Eagle. The Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association was formed in 1991. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization supported by members to educate and advocate for renewable energy in Michigan. And you can learn more about GLREA membership opportunities at our website, www.glrea.org. You can also find out about our annual seminar and annual conference that's coming up in December, and we hope that we see you there. The Renewable Energy Seminar is part of GLREA's Solar Story series that was created by our esteemed John Sarver. Our RES includes content ranging from technology to business to public policy and covers topics of interest to renewable energy users, businesses, advocates, stakeholders, and policymakers. You can send any questions or comments or suggestions directly to me, Mark Clevey, your host, at mclevey123 at gmail.com. We ask that you please remember to mute yourself. Also, please hold all your questions until the end of the presentation. You can go in under React and ask a question, and I will call on you. Pope Francis's two landmark encyclicals, they were called by Bill McKibben as the most important document yet of this millennium, and by Pankaj Mishra, arguably the most important piece of intellectual criticism in our time. I apologize for mangling that name. In these two encyclicals, the Vatican has articulated some of the strongest environmental statements to date, calling for all of this. And I know Charles is going to be talking about this because this goes well beyond just those who are practicing Catholics, to take a personal responsibility and redirect our relationship with nature to ensure the future sustainability of this planet. Reverend Morris, or we like to think of him as Charles, Father Charles, has been a Catholic priest for over 30 years. He is a good friend and colleague and an outstanding example of how to be the change one wishes to see in the world. He has blessed wind farms and solar installations all across the state. Reverend Morris served as the pastor and renewable energy expediter of the St. Elizabeth Parish in Wyandotte, Michigan, one of the first houses of worship to install wind and solar energy in Michigan. And we probably was the first to do both wind and solar. He is also the co-founder of the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. And most recently, Reverend Morris has served as the assistant professor and priest for Madonna University, He has a master's in sociology from the University of Michigan, a master of divinity from St. John's Seminary, a master in urban planning from Wayne State University, and studied solar and renewable energy at Oakland Community College. Tonight, Charles will discuss the instrumental role Pope Francis's two encyclicals play as an enabler of both faith and sustainability. For example, Pope Francis calls for technological innovation in renewable energy and other areas of sustainability, principally solar energy. And with that, I welcome Father Charles.
Thanks very much, Mark. I'm going to, let's see, share here, share screen. Can you all see that?
Not yet. There we go.
Okay. And then
slideshow.
I don't know how to do the top, how to do it.
Hit slideshow and then full screen. The top.
Okay, you know what? I got this thing's being okay. I just because it said the slideshow.
There you go. And then click from beginning.
Okay. So now I said now for something completely different. There's Monty Python, because tonight it's going to be more poetry than prose. It's a little different than usual Thursday night, but step back, take a big picture. So anyhow, a little bit more about me. I was ordained 1983. As Mark said, I put a solar wind hybrid generation on my rectory roof in 2001. And then 2 years later, I added solar thermal hot water and solar attic fan. Over the 1997 to 2010, we reduced our utility bills and usage by 70%, 70, through behavior change energy efficiency, and renewable energies. So they all go together. It's a gestalt. Um, I have a little confession. So I'm going to do now. Oh, yeah, and my biggest claim to fame, I guess. I did some other things, but I made the 2006 Rolling Stone magazine honor roll. But I mean, it's CBS Sunday Morning News, New York Times, Michigan Energy Award in the 2011. The renew was a Green Barrel Council 2012 because we were the first cemetery. My first cemetery is the first cemetery in the state of Michigan and the first Catholic cemetery in the United States to be certified by the GBC in terms of a sustainable life. Um, I have a confession to make. I'm not really dealing because there's only one encyclical, just a bike. Laudate Deum was a follow-up a year or two ago, which was saying it's a letter Francis saying, you know, I laid this stuff out in Laudato Si, and you guys haven't done much with it yet. So it was like a taking you to the woodshed kind of moment. But anyways, so I'm going to focus on the 2015 encyclical Laudato Si. So what I'm going to do is talk what's an encyclical, briefly go through some of the chapters. There's 6 chapters, and say just tease out the highlight, and then a couple other things, and then what's this got to do with GLREA, and why is this important to become conversant with that document? Okay. Um, so, with that in mind, Laudato Si, how this uh, papal letter celebrates the work of GLREA. There we go. So what's an encyclical? I'm gonna move this stuff over here. Okay. It's originally a letter written by the Bishop of Rome to a local community. It's a letter. In 1740, Pope Benedict XIV composed the first encyclical that went to the entire Catholic Church, which was a direction, something about faith and morals, something they should do. However, the first social encyclical, and there are 15, 15 social encyclicals. Pope Francis has written one since then, since Laudato Si, which addresses some worldwide concern, something going on in the world in terms of that addresses justice or economics or people. So, like the first one had to do with labor rights, Rerum Novarum in 1891. Then you have people like John the 23rd, 1963, Pacem Terris. It was about after the nuclear test ban treaty, nuclear war and peace. With the Solidarity strike in 1980 in Poland, Gdansk, Pope John Paul II wrote on human labor, laborum exertions. With the collapse of the markets in 2008, Pope Benedict wrote on charity, but addressed with moral markets, how to make them moral. So they all have to do with something going on, and climate is the big driving force for Pope Francis. Okay. It was written in June of 2015. It follows in the tradition of those social encyclicals, which is addressed to everybody in the whole planet. It's not just for Catholics. Some things are just in-house stuff. This is for everybody. It's a dialogue with everybody. Why? Because we're all in this together. Okay. And I have to say, some of this stuff comes from Jane Linehan, who is my boss, and the few of these slides, some of these I just left from her, but basically, it's the first encyclical in the Italian language, Laudato Si, Signor, and it's based on Francis' Canticle of Praise, which we'll get into. Okay, and she said everything is related. Your brother, sun, sister, moon. It's very much of interdependence is a theme. It's everything's connected. So that's an underlying theme that you'll see time and time. That's Francis harkens to in this letter. So there's 6 chapters. The first chapter is about what's happened to our common home. You might have heard that he spoiled it to our common home, and basically everything's, these are, we're a throwaway culture. Which he says the earth's we're turning into a rubbish heap. He uses this very colorful language, and you see the things which the quality of life, breakdown society, global inequality, natural resources, water. So anyways, diversity. So what happens in one part, the web of life happens to all of us. And so that's why it's a moral issue to which we must be concerned. Okay. And who's got a voice at the table? And the excluded, from this, who's making the decisions are the majority of the world's population. Okay, so uh, this is a so he must integrate questions of justice and debates on the environment so as to hear both the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. I'm going to throw a few things in here because it has to do with environmental justice, partner. Just a little interlude here. Question I asked, from scripture, from Genesis, and my brother's keeper, Cain and Abel, and the Good Samaritan story, where the lawyer asks, love your neighbor as yourself, and who's my neighbor? And then Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, like who basically nobody should be, there's no other, there's no insiders, outsiders, there's no somebodies and nobodies. But if you have that vision, then what does that mean? That we're all in this together. So I just, so, this is something else I had. Metakwes and Lakota prayer coming out of the sweat lodge for all my relations, my brother. Though, who's my brother, my sister, and my neighbor? Those who look like us, those near us, the poor, people of color, other cultures, the four-legged, if the seventh generation, called us. So anyways, okay. So I just a couple of things. I had a bunch of stuff, but I threw it out in the interest of time. I think we all know that we're being cooked, but I just want to say the CO2 and temperatures, that's the Mauna Loa, the annual tempered CO2 that's in Hawaii, that's been there since it's 1960s. During the last ice age, it was 170 parts per million. Okay, the thing. So now it's been over 280 parts per million, and now it's over 400 parts per million, the highest level in 3 million years. So there's it's with the continued reliance on fossil fuel. And this week, I wanted to put this in here. We passed the Paris climate threshold that was agreed in 2016. We are now at over 1.5 degrees Celsius rise over the pre-industrial level. So just global warming potential, it measures, impact of other greenhouse gases relative to carbon dioxide. And it's not just CO2. 1 ton of methane has the impact, given the same volume as 28 tons of carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. And the thing about CO2, though, unlike methane, it stays in the atmosphere over a century and is dispersed to the world. And I'm sorry, Miss Janice's I had a conflict on it, but about trying to sequester that. Never mind. It's a fool's errand. So much as the carbon has been sequestered in the ground and water, and the base, when it's burned, when fossil fuels burn, the carbon's released to the atmosphere, as we know, and the oceans. The thing is, the oceans are getting saturated. Much of the excess carbon to the present, they're getting to the point where they can't hold much more. I mean, that's one reason that's held temperatures didn't go up as fast as they might have, is because the oceans were sucking this stuff in. But you can only do it for so long. So, anyways, in the future, these are some other issues. As permafrost melts, methane is released, which creates another positive feedback loop. And this was really, if you look at the great extinction, the Permian extinction, that was it, volcanic action and methane, which destroyed 95% of life on Earth at the time. Furthermore, as Arctic ice melts, the albedo effect, the reflection of radiation is lessened since the dark sea absorbs heat while the white ice reflects it. So this is another example of a positive feedback loop. And there's so much we could go into, but I just using this as a couple of examples. Okay. So the address of Pope. So Pope's basically what science is saying. But I want to get into this stuff like we were talking before the meeting about heat islands in the port. And a few years ago, you had your keynote when you met in Detroit. The brewery was Doug Kalbach, the Urban Thinks. We talked about heat islands, and this happens in cities where more populations gathered. There's less cooling, and surface absorbs more heat because of concrete and the like. And then the rural areas, there's more cooling, transpiration plant. So it's as we know, it has, and who's living there? It's a lot of people of color. There's a thing of 50. You can see some of that stuff in the nation. Race is the most significant predictor of a person living near contaminated air, water, or soil. Um, relationship. And I said the research that in Michigan that Elaine Hockman and I did bore this out. Um, we just said that if you were living, there was a relationship between environmental style pollution explains 50% of the variance, which is a half. That's off the charts of a of a of a like cancers and asthma. I mean, that are affecting people. So people of color are more exposed to the most forms of pollution, especially the most noxious airborne pollutants, like incinerators, factories, power plants. So those are those things that are there because that from based on fossil fuel. So it's the cars we drive, the on heating our homes, but you look at factories and power plants and the like. Okay. And these forms of pollution then have the greatest impact of rates of cancer, asthma, and low birth weight. Pretty like yeah. So, and here's something here. Example. This is a mapping we did to 1990. This is 1990. So that's the incineration rates higher in 1990, and the cancer index. This is like Wayne County, but you can see there's a very strong, just a visual relationship there. Now, this is something then I did pollution density in 2020. So the amount of pollution per square mile in these areas, these are zip codes. This again, Wayne County, and the asthma rates. There you go. So it's there. You can see there's very strong overlap, and I mean and it goes throughout the entire state. But I just wanted to give a quick, no matter how you cut it, look at it, it has an impact. So Pope's saying this having because he's very strong in what's happening to the poor. The cry of the earth, cry of the poor. So then he goes to chapter 2. He goes, what does the Bible say? Scripture. And the other thing, though, in paragraph 69, other living beings have a value of their own in God's eyes. So we're responsible to use creation wisely, not to trash it. We're co-creators. Every human person has dignity. They're made the imago Dei, the made in the image of God. Okay. So chapter 3 of that gets into let's see, where get out here. Technology. Again, the problem is that technology, it's like a great servant, like fire, but a terrible master. What happens when technology gets out of control? Not only for selfish purposes, but then again, it tends to we dehumanize. It separates us from our neighbors, right? Globalization, the technocratic paradigm, seeing technology as only a tool of human control. And this is the crisis of modern anthropocentrism. Anthropocentrism saying that I'm apart from creation, not a part of creation. And everything revolves around me. It's narcissism run amok. And we see that in our polity today, but I won't say any more there. Okay. So then chapter 4, he talks about the integral ecology. This is something he really introduces in that text, that everything's interrelated. All dimensions of our life in this world need to work together because it's, again, the web of life. So we have to address all our systems. We can't address ecological issues without economic and social ones. So he says here in 139, strategies for a solution demand an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, and at the same time protecting nature. Now you might say at this point for a moment, what's this got to do with GLRA? We're getting to that because we're all part of that interrelated stuff. Okay. Then he's culture ecology. He's talking especially the rich diversity of human cultures, particularly indigenous cultures, is under threat from a globalized consumerist exploitation of the world's natural resources. You can see that's going on in Brazil, or what's happening in Indian country here, where the trying to think for mineral rights or oil, drill baby drill. And is that the quality of life? That's what life's about, anyways. People's cultures and their ways of life are erased when their lands are destroyed. So, And, oops, sorry. So I just moved here. Okay. Um, so they said in daily life, there's Catholic social teaching principles and uh, how we live, our own personal choices we make. Hint, hint. The principle of the common good. We're all in this together. Um, that if it's not like zero sum game, but it's more like an open source software, collaborative power. Your victories become mine, your hurts, pains mine. We're all in this. They share. So there's also intergenerational justice. Well, who are they going to come after us? That's why, like the Iroquois, the seventh generation question. Well, how's this going to impact those who come after us? The world, because the world belongs to those folks too, aren't who have no voice at the table yet, and we have to be their voice. Um, its gifts are on the gifts that we have from the world are unknown to us. Okay. Uh, so we get to chapter 5. It's so we work together. It's calling for dialogue. So he's big on that about respect, and he picks up on this next in his latest encyclical Fratelli Tutti about encountering other people. That we got to listen to everybody. It's not just that it's not a top down kind of thing of decision making. Uh, we roll in colonialism, run amok. Okay, but when we listen, take the time, then we come to a better approach to the whole planet, everybody. Dialogue in the internet, it's a global crisis because we're not doing that. Um, it's dialogue trends and making decision making. Uh, Dialogue and economy, politics and economy, dialogue for human fulfillment. Religions have to be in dialogue with science. These are things that have to be connections that have to be made. If we're interconnected, then we can't be siloed anymore. We have to talk to other folks with one another. Okay, and be transparent as to how we do it, how we approach stuff. So one thing I wanted to refer to, because in this chapter, here's the thing, a direct shout out to the work of GLRA. 179, he talks about cooperatives community. They promote creativity and gender love for the land. In fact, I'm just going to read this chapter, if you don't mind. I think he had this one paragraph because I think you can see like community solar and some other things that really champion or GLRA is doing is right smack dab in this book. It says in some places, cooperatives are being developed to exploit renewable resources of energy, which ensure local self-sufficiency and even the sale of surplus energy. This simple example shows that while the existing world order proves powerless to assume its responsibilities, local individuals and groups can make a real difference. They're able to instill a greater sense of responsibility, a strong sense of community, a readiness to protect others, a spirit of creativity, and a deep love for the land. They're also concerned about what they will eventually leave to their children and grandchildren. These values are deeply rooted in indigenous peoples. Because the enforcement of laws is at times inadequate due to corruption, public pressure has to be exerted in order to bring about decisive political action. Society, through non-governmental organizations and intermediate groups, must put pressure on governments to develop more rigorous regulations, procedures, and controls. Unless citizens control political power, national, regional, and municipal, it will not be possible to control damage to the environment. Local legislation can be more effective too if agreements exist between neighboring communities to support the same environmental policies. Seems for me, when I read that, seems, gosh, it sounds just like what GRLRA is all about, and things like community solar and pressuring legislatures to, from the bottom up. Um, so, to cause for public pressure to rein in government and corporate intransigence. So I said, chapter 6 says a new lifestyle. It's stepping back. We got to step back from consumerist mentality and choosing a modest lifestyle that care for relationships with us. It's not, it's not those who die with the most toys win. It's I hear Billy Graham said there's no U-Hauls following a hearse. So education for the covenant between humanity. You build up the world one relationship at a time. We build one things we do is relationship building. Um, and I mean, John Freeman was talking about me with he was a Bouchard, and when he did the incinerator close, you had to work across the aisle. Ecological conversion. fostering awareness of our universal communion with all beings. Joy and peace, it's just so basically what he's saying, we got to step back, and this is where he gets into the more spiritual. I think even though it's ecological spirituality, I think there's something to be said for all of us. First of all, his idea of sacramentality of all life. The sacraments, that's a specifically Catholic or Catholic-like term, but these are actions or things that are there that we see that are moments of grace, a moment of the divine, a moment of spirit. I always said putting up a solar panel and wind turbines in my rectory, that was sacramental. It was preaching. And one thing when he calls back to the sense of the Sabbath, and this is a spiritual conversion, I think, for all of us, to sit back and so you can contemplate the big picture instead of because otherwise you get burned out. Especially the headwinds we're facing right now. I think somehow there's something to be that, like retreats and other kinds of things. Step back and look at the big picture and feed your soul. Because that's something, something too in beauty. Okay. And these are a couple of things I said. We're all part of the web of life. We're a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. As Thomas Berry says, this is more spiritual. I say, this is mine. We are part of, not apart from creation. So ain't no anthropocentrism here. I said in Genesis 2:15, Adam was put in the Garden of Eden to cultivate it, abad, to serve the garden, not to cover it with asphalt. And we're gardeners and design co-creators of a fertile fecund future as we usher in, what kind of vision do we have for the future? Now, with some good news. So I just want to say good news. Just a few things. Elaine Hochman and I have discovered that the biggest difference between 1990 and 2020 is that solar and wind have replaced much of the energy in Michigan that was produced by incineration, which was the most noxious form of carcinogenic and asthma-producing pollution. So I'm going to say some slivers of good news that have happened over these years we've been able to document. The faith community has taken the vision, the laid out in Laudato Si to heart. Interfaith Power and Light, in partnership with Solar Faithful, GLREA, Michigan Saves, has impacted over 300 houses of worship across the state. And this is just repeated state after state, not just here. Okay. Energy efficiency and renewable energy, therefore, in the context of this vision of Laudato Si, are more than just energy independence. They're pointing to a future fertile and fecund for everyone. So there's faith community staying up, demanding clean energy there, picture. And so what is the benefits of GLREA members in becoming conversant with Laudato Si? But I came up with 3. And this is not expensive. You can actually go on the Vatican Web. You can read the thing online if you want to, or you can buy, a simple thing. And it's good. It's soulful. It provides a common language for us when engaging the faith community. You can speak their lingo. If you want to engage, they call for dialogue, and even some faith leaders who are reluctant, if you put their understanding the lingo, it's going to break down some barriers. It provides a wider moral vision for the work we are engaged. Renewables are sacramental. We're part of a bigger picture here. The moral impetus. It's not just something making money or this is cool to be independent. No, this is something sacred and holy work that you're about, your prophets. And that provides a spiritual canvas for the great work of which we are a part and a path to a more contemplative spirit. It also counters discouragement and burnout. Read and reflect in this document. It's kind of people doing this, that we're all part of something. You start to see the connections, the interconnections that Pope Francis reminds everybody of. So I just want to close here with 2 stories that I think of as reflective. Story number 1. There's a bunch of starfish on the beach. This guy comes with one kid throwing starfish out in the sea. And he says, guys, thousands of starfish. What difference is it going to make? He says, it's going to make a difference to this one. And that's what we do. It's existential. It's, deontological. We make the right code because it's the right thing. We don't worry about, everybody else is not. They'll follow. It's stepping out faith. The other story is the 3 men in a quarry. So a guy comes up and interviews these guys working in the quarry. he says the first guy, what you doing here? He says, I'm just trying to get through the day. He goes to the second man. Why are you here? He says, well, I'm trying to make a better life for my family. And then he goes to the third one. He says, why are you here? He says, I'm building a cathedral. Well, I want to say to the members of GLRA, you're all about the task of building a cathedral. So I thank you for your time tonight. So I'll stop share.
Charles, excellent. Thank you so very much. We're going to take some questions now. Oops. So if you have a question, you can go down to the bottom which says react and raise a hand, and I'll see you. Use the old system used to move to the front of the line. But Janice, I see you have your hand up, so you can go first if you want to. Janice Means, you want to go first?
Mute.
Actually, I was just applauding. That's okay. I did put a comment in there, which because hello, Father Charles. It's good to see you. I heard you make a comment about carbon sequestration, and I did put a comment back in there regarding that. In that we're not anywhere near being able to get to zero energy, especially now with Trump coming in. It's going to affect the whole world. Carbon sequestration needs to be done. I'll be presenting on that, by the way, in Greece next week.
Oh, good.
Excellent.
Yeah,
excellent.
I say that's you know, it needs to be all the above approach, but carbon it ain't the answer. I mean, it ain't the it ain't the answer or the solution.
No, it isn't the solution. It's part of the solution.
Yeah, right.
It's supplemental to the solution of going to net zero.
Right.
Thank you for an excellent presentation.
Thanks, Janice. John Freeman, you got a question?
Yes, I do. And I want to echo Janice's comment that thank you so much, Charles. It was a great presentation. I'm curious about what happens when a pope issues an encyclical. How does it get marketed throughout the Catholic Church across the world? I mean, how does the pope take a document and make it real to all of its parishioners? I mean, is there a kind of a coherent campaign that's done to kind of move it out and make it real to people?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, it's like what's up on the what's in the air at the moment. Like some encyclicals, like for instance, the famous information, it depends what Humanae Vitae was basically for Catholics. It was about that was a moral family life, and in people wanted to hear now, but social encyclicals like Laborum Exertions, like on charity, like Laudato Si, and this more recent one, Fratelli Tutti, about encounter of other cultures, is to be there's supposed to be every the communication arms, each diocese across the planet, they make available that this has come out. The bishops' conferences are supposed to promulgate it. Dioceses, which are geographical conglomerates, like in Michigan, we've got 6 dioceses, and the Archdiocese of Detroit is the 6 counties of Southeast Michigan. They have the opportunity to do something about it if they want. Unfortunately, our diocese has done basically diddly squat. However, parishes are doing things, and they have like this one. They have a Laudato Si Action platform, which you can access. The Vatican, you say Laudato Si Action platform. Parishes and institutions, schools can do all kinds of things, individual level, legislatively, and in groups, small groups. We have in fact, with that thing, John, which you were part, we did that in Madonna in June. We have we had one of the things we did is follow. We had small faith sharing group sharing resources that we passed out to the attendees, that hopefully they'll take that and apply that, and apply things they can do in their own parishes. That as well as hearing their voice in Lansing. And one of the things, there's a moral voice. If you can quote from the Pope, at least you get some moral voice. It's not just you, this is my own preference, but this is something, there's a moral component behind this.
Could I ask one more follow-up question?
Sure.
In an earlier career, when I was much younger, I was involved with community organizing, and we got some financial support for the Campaign for Human Development, the foundation arm of the Catholic Church. Do you know whether that foundation gives out grants for people organizing around renewable energy?
They could. Unfortunately, they've cut back this year. That's I think so on political too, but they have, yeah, they can, because it's supposed to be. They do that. There's also, we got the grant from the Catholic Foundation. When we did, I think, of Madonna. There are grants. So they do grants for that, but I don't know how much they're going to be doing going forward, to tell you the truth.
Thank you very much.
So, Charles, I have a question. So you mentioned that I assume it's at the Vatican where parishes can sign on and talk about what they're doing.
Well, yes, there's a thing. There's 7-year Laudato Si. I forgot to put that in there.
Yeah.
And
so would it be possible to find out who the parishes were in Michigan that responded?
It's possible. Let me, we got some time. Let me see. Let me see. I'm gonna share screen for a second. Laudato Si action. So see action platform.
I guess I'm going in the same place that John was going, that if GLREA could say we're going to take these parishes that have already made a commitment to do something and engage with them on solar. We have a pretty good quiver of arrows now between the third-party funding and stuff that's going on, or the companies, the parishes that would want to do it themselves. And there's, you as better than most know that the funding for this can be organized to where the energy savings would basically pay off the payment. I think that would be an interesting thing to talk to them about.
Right. You see, I just pulled it up. There's a actual platform right here.
Oh,
interested. So there's things that cry there. See, there's different ecological. There's 7 different buckets. All their education, spirituality, sustainable lifestyles, environmental justice stuff, economics, community resilience. So you can learn more about these goals, and people can tie into that. There's another thing I wanted to share. I'm going to stop sharing this. So it's this, if you want to, if you're interested, Laudato Si actionplatform.org. Okay. The other thing I want to show, the Pope did just this recently in June. I forgot to mention this. Wait a second. Let me share screen again, because here it is. Is this it? The screen? Nope. That's let's see if that's the one I did. Nope. Never mind. That's from that. Anyways, he said a letter that they've got a agrivoltaic. I cut it shut down. There's called a modo proprio, which is a letter he directed. It's outside the Vatican Gardens, a farm, and so he already put solar panels there. Actually, before that, Benedict put solar panels on the Paul VI Center, and then he's also planted trees in Hungary to try and do carbon offsets. So, trying to go to carbon neutrality for the Vatican. So that's one thing. You might criticize them for the Vatican for a lot of stuff, but that's one thing where they've compared to a lot of other institutions or countries, they've been pretty good at walking the talk.
So what do you think we should do, Charles? What do you think GLREA should do? We have this in front of us. What's next? How can we engage better? I mean, I like what you said, that whenever we do solar, we're doing something spiritual. We're I forget what word you use, but essentially it's a tribute to the natural world and what we assume is God's plan. So if we wanted to do more of that, how would we engage? I mean, it seems to me that the Catholics are more attuned to this than others at this point, because the leader of their faith has brought this up. And as you said, at the diocese level in Detroit, nobody cares. But at some certain point, they're going to have to care, because the temperatures are rising in Michigan. It's enough, and people are going to be, the heat stress is going to have direct effects in people in Detroit laying in the streets in front of the diocese. So eventually they're going to have to say, oh, well, the devil moved in, or we've met the enemy and it's us.
Well, it's there's just because the Pope's not anthropocentric doesn't mean that some maybe other folks that are in positions of power in the church are.
Yeah.
But I think I would suggest that people want to, I mean, just individually or just if they're friends to, it doesn't matter what your faith perspective is to the document, because I read this in a couple hours when it came off online, and it's like I said, it kind of, you can step back, and if you apply some of these things like taking this a Sabbath to looking at the big picture, starting to make relationships. These are slow stuff, but and looking at the Laudato Si Action platform, see what other places are doing. There are, through Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, they've got tabs on what parishes, churches are doing now. The Catholic churches, Solar Faithful is doing and then another church, the Cross Fellows of Worship across the entire state of Michigan. There's really cool stuff going on. Churches, mosques, temples, synagogues, you name it. So it's interfaith. Anybody who gets that kind of that vision, and that we can support each other in that too. So it's I just want, one of the things about this, I'm glad you asked this, because sometimes we can get so caught up in the technicalities of stuff we're doing that's good to step back occasionally. He's asking us to do, and step back and contemplate the big picture.
For sure. Do we have any other questions? So, Charles, you're retiring from Madonna University soon, right?
Probably pretty soon. I said I'm like in Star Trek. I'm in the transporter room right now. I'm an adjunct at the moment, so
hopefully they don't transport you into the middle of a bulkhead. So what's next in Father Charles' playbook?
Well, one of the things we're doing right now, he said that I was saying before, environmental justice research I've been doing with my old friend. We're trying to get students, maybe some of the University of Michigan, to stuff, because we got a tremendous amount of data. I want to work more with that to and especially like in the positive things, what's happening with, impact the renewables are having. We haven't really measured that yet, but we have the capability of doing so. We have solar installation data on that. So across the state. So
that's for faith-based organizations, or
no, for anybody. No, we're not faith.
So where do you get that data? You said you have.
I got the demographic data I got through this mapping software I have mapped.
Okay. All right.
State of Michigan, we got Eagle. We got all the pollution data from state of Michigan, Eagle, and we got the health department. We got things like cancer data, and then we got asthma and birth weight data from other sources too. So we just put it all together.
John Freeman, I was just thinking, this thought popped into my head. I'll bet that when a local government gets a building permit for purposes, that somehow gets reported at the state level. And I wonder if there's a master database someplace in the state government that has a database of every solar installation in the state.
I think you're right. And I think it through the Michigan Public Service Commission.
Really? Instead of licensing?
Well, they have to do a report every February it's required by state legislation that was enacted, I think, back when Granholm was governor, for Public Act 295. Part of that original legislation was that the Public Service Commission has to do this report it to the legislature about what are the levels of distributive energy in Michigan. And as a part of in order to do that report, I'm pretty sure that the utilities are required to report every single
net meter
installation that they connect to the grid,
which is everything
for the commission to do this data.
Right.
The question, of course, for us is focus, capacity, and follow up. But I think I think Father Charles has done his job in the sense that he's nudged me to take a step back and to think about the big picture and how can we. One of the conversations I have with Marshall pretty regularly is how to take our work to scale. You know, we've got a good thing going with this organization, but we need to accelerate it, and we've got a state of 10 million people. So how can we expand what we're doing on a larger level and have more impact more quickly? And so that's kind of like what I'm thinking about. And I think you might be right. It may be time to follow up. And again, you know, we're having Dan Scripps speak at our year begin meeting because we work so closely with the Public Service Commission.
Well, maybe talking to them about, there's another whole set of data out there that Father Charles has access to, and we could correlate the solar data that they have from Public Service Commission, correlate it with other things that are going on. And in some cases, increasing solar installations in a given area could be a climate change mitigation strategy. Offsets places that are already under stress, ecological stress, environmental stress, et cetera, heat stress, et cetera. So they begin prioritizing places where they would put emphasis and stuff. Anyway, another conversation for another time. Jay, you have a question?
Not a question, but a comment. Just wanted to say that there's a growing number of people, such as myself, that have significant solar deployments who are grid tied, but we do not export to the grid and have no contract with DTE and don't ever care to. So, though we don't back feed into the grid, we are a solar installation that is unaccounted for on anyone's books.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's
probably accounted for, but it's not tracked.
Yeah, because you're still paying. I mean, I have a solar system, and it's pretty rare that I pay DTE anything, but I do have to pay them, I think, $8.50 a month as a base fee.
Yes,
so,
I keep them as a backup as well.
Yeah.
I have a story, just a story to share with that. Back in 2001, when we put solar, there was not even net metering, no relationship with the grid. Of course, I was a municipal wind out anyway. So it was battery. So we were self-powered. And then out of spite, when the big blackout happened, we just turned on the porch lights. So
anyway. I love it. Lee.
Yeah, good evening. John, didn't you and I go to a township meeting in Grass Lake, and most of the land that was involved was owned by the local Catholic diocese?
I'm not sure that was me.
Okay.
That might have been
the reason it
Jay
came
Conkle or maybe Wayne Appleyard.
Well, the reason that thought came to me today is I got approached by one of the churches in our county who has 31 acres. And they've actually been approached by a developer who wants to cover that 31 acres with solar as an ordinary development. And I tried to caution him a little bit because churches have a legal status that's, remove them from some taxes and stuff like that. So does anybody on the call today have any experience with a congregation that actually became a host for a utility
Well,
size
well,
array?
a couple comments, Lee. As a result of the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden got enacted 2 years ago,
Right.
now churches can directly put solar on their church and get a direct payment from the federal government that represents 30% of the cost of the system. And Rob Rapson, who is one of our members out in Muskegon, Chart House Energy, he is working with Solar Faithful to put solar all over places of worship across the state of Michigan. So Rob would be someone that I could easily connect you to talk about this project in your neck of the woods.
No, that's not the point. This is not on their web place of worship. This is a commercial developer who found a piece of land that happens to be owned by a church where they
Right.
want to put a utility scale system in. And my question is there some legal hook that's going to cause a problem for this congregation?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, my gut
No.
instinct tells me if the church owns the land, then they can sign a contract
Right.
with the developer for the developer to rent the land, just
Right.
like they would any private sector owner of land, whether it's a farmer. I mean, the church obviously signs contracts with many private sector companies to do various things, whether it's to make repairs on their church over time or whatever. I just read today that Notre Dame is about to be reopened in Paris after the horrible fire 5 years ago. Their church there obviously had to hire many contractors to rebuild that church. So I would think if it's a matter of simple contract law, in other words, I don't think that the particular legal status of the church would impact their ability to sign a contract with a third-party developer. I would think it's just a normal, transaction.
But they wouldn't get the tax credit the church wouldn't get a tax credit. The contractor would though. But he wouldn't get the one the church would get.
It's just a question about whether this would ruin the tax exempt status of the church when it does other business.
Churches have all kinds of income.
Just pipe in that if you want to check, the IHM Mother House DT has a bunch of solar panels, and they've had that for a few years. If you're interested, maybe talking to Danielle Conroy, who Mark knows.
Yes.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go on to something else then.
All right. Well, we're coming up to the end of this thing. If I got time for one last question, if anybody is. Otherwise, I want to thank Charles. Thank you so much. I was telling Charles today that GLREA is going to give him an award for his lifetime of work and all the good things that he has done at our meeting in December. So hopefully we'll see all of you guys there. John, you want to talk a minute about that conference?
Well, it's scheduled for December 7th. It's a Saturday. We're doing a hybrid approach. We will have an in-person component in Lansing at the AC Hotel Lansing. It's a part of the Marriott chain. It's a pretty new hotel. It's like 3 years old. It's beautiful. It's it's on Michigan Avenue, just a little bit east of I-27 or 127.
127, right.
And it starts at 10:30. We will also have a Zoom version for people that can't make the drive. Tickets are $35, and that includes a breakfast and lunch, and then it's only $25 for the Zoom version. We have a number of panels. We've got two great speakers, Dan Scripps, the chairman of the Michigan Public Service Commission, and then we have Douglas Jester, who is of Five Lakes Energy, and he will be kind of laying out the next steps, the vision that Father Charles talked about of where we need to go to continue this transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy that for the next few years. And then probably we'll talk a little bit about the impact of Trump at the federal level and how that may or may not have a great impact in Michigan. So I think it will be a great event. So I would encourage all of you to buy a ticket. I sent out a newsletter this morning promoting this event right now, but also the Year in Year Begin meeting. So please go on the website and buy your ticket. And of course, because GLREA is a nonprofit organization, the tickets are tax deductible. So go ahead and sign up. We'd love to see you.
All right, and with that, I want to again thank everyone for coming. Thank you, Charles, Father Charles, for your excellent talk. And if those of you who are driving home, drive carefully.